Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, where today I'm joined by Greg Mohr. He is a franchise expert. And if you recall, just a couple weeks ago, we had Brad Davis on the podcast talking a little bit about his franchise experience with the smoothie industry. So Greg, he's going to jump into the franchise world a little bit more into detail, giving his experience and his journey throughout the franchising experiences that he has been through. Likewise, he's a firm believer that franchising isn't actually for everybody. So he's going to help guide us through that. And so all my young entrepreneurs out there who are trying to focus on their own journeys, maybe franchising is for you. In today's episode, we're going to find out. So with that all being said, let's jump into today's episode. Greg, appreciate you for joining us here today. If anyone is out there watching, I was commenting on this right before we hit record. Greg's got a fun little cabinet behind him with all these fun trophies. He's got tiki masks, he's got swords, he's got typical trophies that look like a sporting event. I love the whole setup you got here, Greg. Tell us a little bit about it for everyone who's watching today's episode.
I appreciate it, Brandon. Thanks for having me today. These were gentlemen that I worked with in the franchise consulting company, like giving out kind of different kinds of awards. And those are all awards for the different, for putting the most people into franchising, with the exception of that one right there in the middle. That is my running trophy. I used to be a cross-country runner and a track on the track team back in high school. Long distance is what I did, and that's what that one's for.
Heck yeah, it's always good to have a little memorabilia. Remember the good old days?
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Greg, like I mentioned, so just a couple weeks ago on the podcast, we released an episode with a man named Brad Davis. Actually, my uncle. He's kind of the tie I had in the franchise world while I was looking into having you on the show as well. He started a company called Roxbury. It was a smoothie company, and he had some experience with franchising different restaurants out here in the great state of Utah as well, Costa Vida, Zuka Juice, and a few other random places. His experience was kind of brought in the franchising world simply because he joined a company, a very early startup, the Zuka Juice, and they were growing like crazy, and they just started blasting out franchise after franchise after franchise. And so his experience is quite well. They had a great success. It eventually got bought out by Jamba Juice. But I want to hear more about your story. You're a franchise expert. Brad, his comes from his own realm where he's been involved with all the franchises. You do something a little bit different where you're almost like a coach for franchises. So tell us a little bit about what you do, what your job description is, and why somebody should be listening to you today.
People come to me. I help aspiring entrepreneurs and seasoned entrepreneurs really get into the world of franchising, or at least take a look at it, see if it's the right option for them on that. So what I do is I do the matchup. I'm kind of like Match.com and Realtor.com all rolled into one. So I work with the franchisors on a regular basis. I get to know who will make a successful franchisee in their system. What traits, what kind of background do they need to have? And then with my clients I work with, I find out from them basically, where have you been? So I know what they bring to the table. Those trunks in your attic are golden, basically, which means that the knowledge that you bring, the experiences you had in the past are great. And people are franchises are looking for people like you. So I need to know where have you been on that one. And then I need to know where you're at now. So what are you looking to put into a franchise, time-wise, money-wise? And then where do you want to be? What are you looking to get out of that franchise system? Where do you want it to take you? Where do you want to be 5 to 10 years from now? So I get to know my clients as much as I can so that I can tailor that franchise around what they have as far as money, what they have as far as time, and where do they want that franchise to be. And then cultural match, as well, something that's fun so that, it's not like, getting up and going to work in the morning. You're getting up and you're doing something that doesn't feel like work and you're making money at it. And it's just a joy to get up in the morning like you're a kid again. It's a lot of fun, playing with your toys. You're playing with your franchise business, but, good professional way. So I do that.
Playing with your toys that make you a lot of money and produces good food or whatever it is for somebody else out there who's buying.
Exactly right, Brandon. Exactly. So that's what I do. And I don't charge anything for my services. Franchisors pay us a referral fee if you decide to invest in one of the franchises I work with. So I got to be really good at what I do or I don't get to eat. And I don't get to feed the family.
I like that. You get to go eat at one of the other franchises you've already invested in.
There you go. They'll feed me.
I love it. Just out of curiosity, what are some of the main brands you've worked with? We'll jump into your early childhood when we get into these Taco Bell stories here in a little bit. But as you're farther along in your career now, what are some of the big restaurants that you guys have worked with?
Teriyaki Bandits is probably the biggest restaurant that we work with on that one. There's not, amazingly enough, there's not a whole lot of large restaurant franchises that we work with out there. Mostly because most of the large franchise restaurants, they get so many people that see them all the time. You and I are driving down the road. We see these all the time. We say, hey, I want to get into one of those. So they really don't need us to help them advertise and help them market.
Gotcha.
So many people come to work with them that in the way of restaurants, we don't have a whole lot of huge ones that we work with.
Cool. Oh, yeah. I want to jump into your story from a long time ago when you were back working at a Taco Bell. You actually had your first experience with a franchise back when you were younger. So tell us a little bit about your experience when you're sitting there making those delicious burritos that I enjoy once every few weeks.
Yeah, Taco Bell is a great experience. Back then, when I was in high school, most of us got jobs at fast food places. And it just so happened that I picked Taco Bell for whatever reason. Maybe they were hiring at the time. I liked Larry and Mary who were running it. I knew them from a previous business they owned. They owned an aquarium shop. Before that, and I used to keep aquarium fish all the time. So I knew them from that. So that was probably one of the reasons why. But I jumped into that, and I didn't realize it at the time, but this was actually owned there. That particular one in Woodland, California was actually owned by a lady named Kathy who owned 50 Taco Bells throughout the Sacramento, California, Woodland, Davis area out there. And I started moving up in the chain. And when I became manager, I realized, hey, this is Kathy, and she's a master franchiser. So I helped her build up her restaurants throughout the Sacramento, California area. And I thought, boy, this franchising thing is real cool. So my first foray into franchising, didn't think much about it at the time, but it always kind of stuck in my head throughout my entire career that was a good time.
That's awesome. And going throughout your journey then, that was when you were younger. Did something happen in college that propelled you towards franchising? I guess just lead us to this connection of why you ended up choosing this as a career path.
So thank you, Brandon. So what I did after that is I went on to manage another restaurant called the Lions Restaurant, which was kind of like an upscale Denny's. It was in Northern California, and it was 24 hours. We had a full bar, piano player on Friday and Saturday nights on that one. So it was a little bit different than Denny's, but I did that one for a number of years, about 15 years in the food service business. Got bored, went back and got a degree in electrical engineering and physics, and got a job at Motorola Semiconductor as a microelectronic circuit engineer. Spent about 15 years there, got my master's degree in business while I was there. Picked up dry cleaners with a friend of mine, privately owned dry cleaners, storage units. We bought some storage units as well. And then I picked up some rental properties on that. And then while I was getting my degree, I read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that about ruined my corporate career after that. It was like, there's something better out there. And then it just dawned on me, because this franchise thing was always in my head. In the back of my mind the whole time. It's like, that privately owned business, cool, kind of nice, but boy, we had to learn a lot about that because we didn't know anything about it. Who do you ask? I mean, I don't know where to go to ask people about it. So I thought that franchising thing was really cool. Had the playbook, step by step. You got a whole bunch of people that are going to help you out. The whole franchising team, all the franchisees. I said, I got to check that out again and get back into that. So got out of the corporate career and said, time to go find a franchise. And that's what I did. Went and found a franchise, owned a franchise for a while. And then I worked with a franchise consultant, really liked what they did. I thought that was just awesome. Get to work from home. Don't have to drive around a lot. Get to work with wonderful people all over the United States, all over the world, actually, and help them realize their dreams, which is really cool. And that's what I do now. I've been doing that for 10, 12 years now.
Awesome. I like the way you described everything too. I feel like I just put your entire life's career summary into ChatGPT and said, make this shorter. And that's the way you just concisely put it. So appreciate that. So yeah, Greg, you obviously went through a different experience where you worked in the fast food and you worked in I guess you should just say the food industry. And then you got a little bored of it, went on, took a typical career. You read the book that is mentioned probably every other episode on this podcast, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think I should just make a giant copy, put it right behind me and make that kind of the poster image of the show here. That book has changed a lot of lives. It changed my life personally as well. Going back to this journey you've been in now, you help. You can kind of use the word here and tell me if I'm wrong. You help entrepreneurs, and I put this for everyone who's watching kind of in quotes, because based upon the conversation we just heard with Brad Davis a couple weeks ago, everyone who listened to that episode, it takes a specific type of entrepreneur to want to jump into the franchise world. You could be the franchisor who starts the restaurants or owns the restaurants and blasts them out to a gazillion different people. But to be the franchisee, it takes a very different kind of entrepreneur. And maybe for everyone who's listening today, maybe this is you. So, Greg, tell us about the type of individual it takes to be one of the franchisees.
Well, the main thing with that, Brandon, if you want to be a franchisee, the one main thing that you have to have is you have to be able to be coachable on that, because they are going to coach you through everything. And then you have to be able to follow a process. And that's why you get into franchising in the first place, is because they have that step-by-step process for you to follow to become successful on that. So coachable, a follow-up process. That's why you're going to get into franchising. If you have younger entrepreneurs out there, some of those I have a little bit of a challenge with, because they've got their own ideas and their own things they want to do, and they want to do things their own way. Perfectly fine. Go out and do that. Every franchise started with an entrepreneur who created their own business and turned it into a franchise, which I can do for you as well. Turn your business into a franchise and help you grow that. My seasoned entrepreneurs, on the other hand, some people come to me, I've run 5 businesses. I don't have any businesses right now. I sold them all off. I'm like, why the heck are you talking to me? You know what to do. You know how to do it. Go do it. And they're like, nope, I know what it takes to build something up on my own. I don't want to do that again, but I do want to get my own business. I want to just step right into that business and just take off running. And that's why you go for franchising. Look at it as an option. It may not be an option for you, but it's a good thing to check out and just do a comparison. Privately owned, start your own, or go with the franchise.
Definitely. And there's a lot of safety when it comes to the actual franchise, being a franchisee. You get the name recognition of the brand. You have all the processes already laid out. All the ordering is going in. You know exactly what's on the menu. You don't really have to be the person who's sitting there testing, doing the A/B testing, what the customers love, what they hate. You get to sit back and you put in your little dollar amount, which we'll jump into here in just a second. And then you get to see the profits start rolling. And then every year, just for just basically your fee, you get to pay the owner of the franchise, who owns the big chain. And you say, thank you for letting me use your name. Thank you for letting me use your brand. And here's the money I owe you for that. And I get to keep the rest. So let's talk a little bit about the financials when it comes to this, Greg. I think there's a misconception that you need to be a millionaire to be able to jump in this game. Obviously, for some brands, you probably do need to be a little bit more wealthy. But tell us, for somebody who's just getting started, they recognize, okay, I tried starting a couple businesses. Maybe it's not for me. Or like you mentioned, I'm just frankly a little burnt out. I'm working completely for myself, but I want still some of the autonomy that comes with franchising. Tell us about the financials that come with it.
Absolutely, Brandon. So when you and I are driving around, we see the things that are the brick and mortar franchises, basically, is what we're talking about there. The McDonald's, Taco Bell's, Burger King, Meineke, Mako, Supercuts, Great Clips. We see all those on a regular basis. So that's what's in our mind at the time, is that they're there. It looks like a big build out. And for some of them, it is. It's, it can be up to $1 million probably for a Taco Bell or McDonald's or something like that. And then they think they have to do it full time. So complete misconception on both accounts. The brick and mortars are great. There's a lot of them that you can do semi-absentee. A brick and mortar, generally speaking, $400,000 or $500,000 for the average investment. Some a little bit lower. I think Supercuts is like $250,000, $300,000, something like that. But it's a little bit bigger chunk of money. You get a 7A loan. You got to put down about 20% on something like that. So you're looking at substantially about $100,000 liquid, needing about a $500,000 net worth, and the investment's around $500,000 for it. Build up. Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, we have what's called the services industry. Services industry is where so the brick and mortar is where, you build it and they will come. Woohoo! Generally speaking, because you put it in an A+ real estate location. Services industry, your clients don't necessarily know you exist until they need you. So you need a great franchise system to drive people to you when that need arises. Those franchises are about $150,000, give or take. If you're working from home and you're going out and visiting with your clients are coming to you if you're working from home. You go out and visit with them. That one probably around $100,000. So generally speaking, what you're going to be looking at, whether it's a brick and mortar franchise or whether it's a services industry franchise, you're looking at a $50,000 franchise fee, one-time franchise fee on that. That's it. Usually doesn't matter which franchise you get into. It's going to be right around that. The rest of the investment is going to be whatever it takes to build out. So if you're working from home, the rest of the investment is just going to be marketing, advertising, if you hire any employees, that sort of thing. So it's not too much more. And that small office runs you about $150,000 on that. And then you've got your royalties that we were discussing earlier, generally speaking, between 5 and 10% for any type of franchise that you get into. For the services industry, you're looking at senior care, you're looking at tutoring, you're looking at home improvement services, building services, many different things that you can think of. About any industry that you can think of probably has or does have a franchise associated with it.
So as I'm trying to figure out, picture I'm in this boat of saying, okay, I've decided I want to jump into this franchise game. I want to jump into something. Do you have some kind of formula that helps people decide if they should go on more the retail side, the foods industry side? How do you help people recognize? Because at first, I'm just picturing like the typical one you'd always imagine is just the food industry, right? You want to go, you open up one of the restaurants, the Taco Bells, the McDonald's, the Subways, whatever it is. That's kind of like the bare bones, what everyone pictures when they're thinking franchising. What is your formula for helping individuals figure out which one would be best for them?
I have a list of questions, Brandon, that we go through every time I talk with one of my clients. I give them what we call the matrix of business types, which is 4 different quadrants, like simple retail, sophisticated retail, business to consumer, business to business. And we go through each one, looking at what their role will be and also looking at where they've been in the past and what they're most comfortable running on that. So it really comes down to a personal view from people about what they want to do. And if they're not sure, then what we'll do is we'll do a comparison. I'll bring some brick and mortar type franchises to them as well as service industry franchises to them. I had a couple that wanted to get into a brewery. They were real estate investors and they like going to the local brewery and they thought, boy, that'd be cool running one of those. So we looked at that, but they said they were open to other suggestions. And they were talking about things that were congruent with the real estate industry, things that they've dealt with on a regular basis. So we ended up putting them into an electrical services franchise because that was more what they saw themselves doing on that. So we really go through that. How do you see yourself? What do you see yourself doing? Do you see yourself in a retail type establishment? Do you like that brick and mortar? And you're okay with the expense on that? Or maybe something more related to something you're doing right now, real estate investing. Good one to bring together. So it's really a process of going through a couple of phone calls with them. I have a questionnaire for them to fill out. We go through that. We go through the matrix of business types and really start talking about what their role was going to be, how much time, how much money they want to invest in that. And then we can really start narrowing it down. And then I bring them opportunities in various different industries if they're not too sure. Most people aren't too sure what they want to get into.
Right.
They do know what they don't like. So quite often I just ask them if there's anything that you don't like. That people can come up with. What they do like, they don't know yet. So we do a comparison of different franchise systems and we go through it on our phone call. I'll send them 5 or 10 different opportunities, various industries if they're not sure. And then once they start learning about them, then they start getting a good feel, trying to picture in their mind doing that. We can narrow it down pretty well that way.
So being a pretty transparent guy, Greg, you've been very open about all this so far. What are some downsides to jumping into the franchise world?
Well, first of all, there's the expense of getting into the franchise. So you got to realize that you will be giving away part of your income on that, 5 to 10% on that. And you've got that $50,000 franchise fee. While franchises allow you some creativity, some of them don't on that. So you can't always be real creative with what you do. And you don't want to be real creative with what you do. So if you are a very creative person, then and you've got the energy for it, you probably want to do something on your own. Because they do have some guidelines for it. Now, I did put a lady into a tutoring franchise, and she was in the hotel motel industry. And she said, she told the franchisor after she got into it that, I see that your model, you're not hitting up. She was in Las Vegas and a vice president in the hotel motel business. And she said, you're not hitting up hotels and motels. She said, well, that's not something, as you indicated before, Brandon, that where they've tried it, where they've got the A and B models out there and all that. They've done all that with everything else. They never tried it with that. So that's not their model, and they have no idea how to go about doing it. But they said, go right ahead if that's what you want to do. So they will allow you some creativity in that. It didn't work out too well for her on that one. So she went back to their model, worked out fine on that one. So the creativity can be a little bit limiting. You got that expenditure on that. Generally speaking, you have a prescribed territory. You can always buy more territory if that's the case, but there's a certain territory that you work in. Whereas if you have your own private business, you can do whatever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want when you do it. So it's kind of a give and take on a few different things.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for being open about that. A lot of times too, when somebody's coming on and promoting something like this on a podcast, it can be very easy to see their version of it where everything is roses and gold and everything's great, but there is some downsides and people got to consider that. So Greg, as we're closing out today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, for one, I want to hear one final piece of advice you would leave to all these young entrepreneurs out there who are listening to the Get Over Yourself podcast today. And then also, I want to hear, we'll include this in the episode description as always, guys, links where you could reach out to Greg, but also where people can find you, Greg, if they want to get in more contact.
Good. So what I would say for entrepreneurs out there, ambitious, aspiring entrepreneurs or seasoned entrepreneurs, consider franchising as an option. It's great to look into it. Not all the people that I introduce to franchises obviously get into them. Once we start going through the process, you start learning. And mine's more about education. You're going to get all the information. You're going to make an informed decision. I'm going to be with you the whole way as we go through the process of learning about the franchises, getting your questions answered to your satisfaction. It's a great option to look at. Always look at that. Always have that option. Look at it. It's great to have options. Compare and contrast. Then decide which is best for you.
Perfect. And now just let us know where we can find you. If anyone out there is listening and says, all right, this caught my ear, I want to reach out to Greg.
You can go to my website, franchisemaven.com. That's franchise, MAV as in Victor, EN.com. Email me at greg@franchisemaven.com or just pick up the phone and give me a call at 361-772-6401.
Perfect. Well, you guys got that. And also, as always, it's going to be in the episode description below. So go ahead and check that out. Greg, once again, thank you for joining us here on the podcast today. For everyone who enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with somebody who you think would benefit from hearing about franchising. Likewise, you guys are always my best form of marketing. So please leave us a 5-star review and continue to share the show. And we'll see you next week.